Finding balance in our lives is never easy. Not for any of us. Yet. Some people seem to have figured it out. They've just cracked the code. And if you listen carefully, they often try to share how they did it so we can follow their path to prosperity and balance. Pay close attention today because that is exactly where we are now headed. This is Prosperity and Something Greater. My guest today is Dr. Neil Baum. He is currently a professor of clinical urology at Tulane Medical School in New Orleans, Louisiana. And Dr. Baum is also the author of Marketing Your Clinical Practice Ethically, Effectively, and Economically, which is in its 4th edition. It is a classic and required reading for anyone who wants to effectively market a medical practice. It's sold over 200,000 copies, been translated into Spanish. And he's also written the Complete Business Guide to a Successful Medical Practice, which was published in 2015. And also he's authored a book entitled What's Going On Down There, which has served as an essential guide for women's health. All told, he's written 10 books on practice management and the business of medicine. And if that isn't enough, in addition to running a private medical practice for decades in New Orleans, he has authored or co-authored over 250 articles that have appeared in peer-reviewed medical publications on various urologic topics, including benign enlargement of the prostate gland, erectile dysfunction, and incontinence. I had the privilege of collaborating with him on an article about practice marketing several years ago. Now, my acquaintance with Dr. Baum goes back over 30 years, which is kind of hard for me to believe, but it's true. And I'll tell the story of that introduction a little later. I've known Neil for years and have marveled at his energy and his productivity since the very first. But I've never had a chance to learn more about how he views his life and what are his thoughts about prosperity. So be sure to pay close attention today. There are so many pearls of wisdom, no matter what you do in your vocation and career, not just for medicine, but for life. I'm pretty sure you're going to return to this episode multiple times. Dr. Neil Baum. Well, welcome everybody to the podcast today. And welcome, Dr. Neil Baum. It's a delight to have you on my podcast, Prosperity and Something Greater. Thank you for doing this.
Well, I've always been a big fan of yours. We go back a long time from podiatry management. I've been in your audience many times. I've read most of your articles, so I feel quite honored to be invited to participate in this. So thank you for including me and having me.
Well, thank you very much. That's very kind. I'll tell you something you may not recall, but we go back far, far longer than anything in podiatry or podiatry management. Many, many years ago, I would say this would be maybe in the 80s, 88, 89, 90. You used to work rather closely with a company called the Doctor's Press, and you had a representative that worked with you by the name of Diane Whitman. And Diane Whitman happens to be my wife and the CFO of our company. One year, and I know that when we went to New Orleans, we went to the Camellia Grill on your recommendation. We went to Pascal Manal's, I think, on your recommendation, and a few other places that you told us to go to. And to this very day, on my luggage, I have a tag that says Jackson on it, which was a gift from you that you'd given Diane, a little thing filled with luggage tags with our last name on it. And they are indestructible. They are beyond indestructible. They're bright red. You can't miss them. So, Neil, we go way, way back, just so you know.
You're making me feel really old.
Well, I was there too. So,
40 years ago. Wow. Okay.
That's 30 years ago, actually, to tell you the truth.
Well, we both had more hair and less gray.
Yeah, much less
Yeah.
gray. That is
Yeah.
for sure. And of course, these days there's much less of me. You look pretty much the same, I think. But I've lost. Well, let's see. That would be 150 pounds in my past. So it's been quite good. Yeah. Yeah. Really super. All right. So I've told everybody about your history and how, you're one of the very first physicians to even discuss marketing or business and to write your book, which became canon for, so many people all these years, and such a help. And now, you're a grandfather. And last time I was on the line with you, just discussing the fact that we would do this, you had a grandchild jump up there. And so I'm curious, how would you define prosperity for you?
Well, if you asked me when we first met 40 years ago, I would define prosperity by how financially successful I was, how many materialistic things I had. And I found out that that really wasn't the key to happiness and prosperity. I remember my father telling me many, many years ago when he was watching me, and he says, you're just so active, you're so running around, you're kind of like an unguided missile, of which I was. And he said, Neil, when you climb the ladder of success, make sure when you get to the top rung that your ladder's not facing the wrong wall. And I believe I was on the wrong ladder and I was chasing the wrong thing. And then as I grew older and became, I hope I became a little more mature, I focused on balance. And when I say balance, I mean I wanted to have my personal life and my professional life be in sync with each other. I didn't want to be out of balance. I didn't want to be at work and wish I was home, and be at home and wish I was at work. And that would be out of balance. But as I grew older, I wanted to put more balance into my life. And my mantra was to be home for dinner. In the beginning, I probably made one night a week where I was home for dinner. And I was so disappointed and felt that I was missing so much. And then I realized how important balance was, and that I could have all these things that I needed and wanted, not necessarily materialistic things, but I could have the balance and I would be home for dinner. So many podiatrists, physicians, professionals miss out, and they miss out because they're climbing that ladder of success. And unfortunately, they find out when it's too late that their ladder's facing the wrong wall. And if you're home for dinner and you're with your family and you get home for dinner, then the scale of balance becomes normalized and equal. I know that's a long answer, but I really feel that from my heart, that I was chasing the wrong things. And then as I grew up, I found what it was that was really important to me. And then I started finding, that the opportunities and the advancement and the achievement, was so much greater than when I was running around, chasing things and never saying no to anybody, taking all speaking engagements, taking all writing assignments, and I was missing out. So that is my concept of prosperity, is to see that what you do and who you are is in harmony, is in balance. And that's prosperity to me today.
Oh, I really like that. I love that. And, when I speak to the doctors that I work with, if you ask them, what's most important to you? They always say, invariably, every single person that I've ever spoken to says, my family and, those that I love. And when you get down to it, though, and you really kind of drill some layers later, you come down to the question of where have you prioritized that part of your life and your family? It's never first. It's never first. It's always, I'll get that under control after I accomplish this or after I do that or whatever. I love what your dad said about the ladder facing the wrong wall. That's a really good one. Neil, so just, if we could spend just a minute on this, one of your pieces of advice that you just said was get home in time for dinner, work things so that you can do that. Now, a lot of my doctors and anybody, not just the doctors, but people in general would say, well, sure, that's my goal, but I don't have enough time. I don't have enough day in my day. I can't do that. Or when they come home now, as you well know, and these doctors come home and they spend, I don't know how many hours just catching up on their notes and their charts and all of that. And I know you cracked the code for yourself on how to make that all happen in the work. But do you have any advice for them? Strategies, maybe just one or two of your top strategies to grab that balance back?
You have to be comfortable delegating. As physicians, we micromanage. And that was one of my weaknesses. I thought I could do it all. I thought I could, order the fax machine. I thought I could pick the stationery. I thought I could complete an assignment, and I was trying to do it all. And then I found out that really, in order to be more efficient and effective, you have to work at the top of your license. And this is a concept that a lot of doctors don't understand. And me too. I always say, when you point a finger at somebody, 3 fingers are pointing back at you. And so when I pointed the finger, I knew that I was responsible, for the inefficiency and the lack of productivity. And then I found out that I had to work at the top of my license. Never was I to work on the website. That's something I don't have skills at. And it's kind of like around the house, my wife, I used to clean out the gutters. And my wife says, you're not cleaning out the gutters. You see one more patient and we hire someone to clean out the gutters, which is far more safe for you. You don't belong on a ladder. You're not skilled at that. And she was right. She was absolutely right. You have to work at the top of your license. So what's the top of a doctor's license? Diagnosis, treatment, and in the case of a podiatrist, surgeon, or someone who is working with their hands, that's at the top of their license. They can't delegate that. They can't fix that hammer, send someone else to fix the hammer toe. They can't delegate to someone else, to find the diagnosis. But they can have somebody else take the history. Here's an example, real quickly. I went to medical school, 4 years in college, 4 years medical school, 4 years residency. Do I have to go to school 12 years to ask a patient, what is it that brought you in here today? Tell me about your medications that you're on. What surgery have you had? Do you smoke? Do you drink? Tell me about your heart, lungs, endocrine system. No, that could be done by someone else. And they report it to me. I go in, I use what's called the sandwich technique. I go in, introduce myself. Mr. Smith, how are you? Nice to see you today. I see you live on such and such a street. Do you know one of the neighbors there? And I spend 30 seconds just becoming a human being to them. I don't walk into the room and say, tell me about your headache, or tell me about your foot pain, or tell me about, your urination. No. Get to know them 30, 45 seconds. My medical assistant is going to come in, ask you a few questions, and then I'll come back and examine you. And then we work out the treatment plan with the medical assistant. They go in and give the patient the medications and the instructions on how to use the medication, what I call the FAQs. And then I go in the room at the end. I told you I call it the sandwich plan. I'm there in the beginning. And the last thing I say to every patient, have I answered all of your questions today? Now, if they start up with another complaint or something else, I say, I know you need more time, but I have patients waiting to see me. If you want to wait at the end of the day, I'll talk. If it's at the end of the day, I can talk to you then. I can give you a call at home later and we can go over that. I don't blow them off for sure, but I don't need to ask and write down what medications that they're on. That can be done by somebody else. I'm not at the top of my license if I'm doing that. And so you have to always ask yourself, is what you are doing that can only be done by you and not anybody else? If it's anything else, you delegate. And once you release yourself from micromanaging, you find you can be home for dinner.
Boy, I agree with you. And, I just had Captain David Marquet on the podcast about 2 episodes ago, and he really, intent-based leadership and how you emancipate your team. You don't empower your team, because if you empower someone, you can disempower them. But if you emancipate them, you free them and they take control. It's usually scary for people like us. Well, thank you for that. I'd like to go back, though, and give you a chance. I'm interested in this. So, what was the defining moment or event that really brought you to the career path that you've followed?
It was about 20 or 30 years ago when I was invited to give the keynote address to the Mexican Medical Association. And it was, to me, a high honor to be asked to do this. I worked very hard on the presentation. My first 30 or 40 seconds was in Spanish, and then I had a translator that would translate it for me. And I accepted the invitation 6 to 9 months before the event. And it happened to be that weekend was my daughter was on the homecoming court of the high school. And my wife says, I can't go. I've got to be here for my daughter. And I said, well, I can't disengage myself from this. I promised it 9 months ago. And I have to tell you, in my career as a medical speaker and accepting professional engagements, there was only one. It was the death of my father that I ever missed. That was it. In dozens, maybe hundreds of programs, there was only one I missed. So I couldn't say no. So I go to the meeting, come home, and my wife, I said, how was the program with Lawrence? She said, oh, it was terrific. How was your program, Neil? I said, oh, it was really good. I said, I didn't get a standing ovation, but they clapped really hard, afterwards. And I received, many nice compliments. And this is what she said to me. She says, Neil, 10 years from now, can you name one person in that audience who will remember you and what you said? Name one. She just said, name just one person. Can you? And I says, no, I can't. I can't do that. She says, I can name one little girl who missed her daddy at homecoming in her senior year at high school. And now you decide. And that was it. I was crushed. I had the wrong priorities. I don't know how I would handle that, but I could have handled it differently. Could have found someone else to go, to do it. There were alternatives that I could have had, but I shouldn't have missed my daughter's homecoming. And that was the defining moment to say, I'm going to get my act together. And I developed, I think it was 4 criteria to accept a speaking engagement. I think it's 3. 1, will it help my career? 2, is it a place I want to go to? Because my wife and I used to go to all these things together. 2, is it a place we want to go to? And 3, is the economic reimbursement worth it? And I had to answer yes to all 3 of those before accepting an engagement after that. My wife and I, we sat down, we worked this out, and I wasn't going to let that happen again. So that was a really what I call that was the wake up call. It's a defining moment, but it was clearly an incident that got my attention, and I will never forget it. And I shifted gears immediately right after that and said that won't happen again.
I think that it's Gary Keller in his book, The One Thing, talks about, he refers to the things that you juggle in your life. You'd like juggling balls. As you juggle those balls, two of them, they're made out of rubber. So your career ball is made out of rubber. If you need to, you can drop it. It'll bounce. You catch it. You move on. There's two balls that are made out of glass. The first one is your family, and the second one are your friends. And if you drop those, they break. And so you don't drop those. And good for you. I've always remembered that, and not that you can't make a mistake, not that you can't learn and get better, but they're first. They're always first. You protect them. The other ones you bounce, you pick them back up. It's not a problem.
What's the first ball, the rubber ball? What's that one?
Well, that would be like your job, your career. And there's some other things too. One of those, if you have an emergency and you've got to go in and operate on somebody or their life will die, well then, everything's off the table then.
Yeah.
And of course,
everybody understands that.
That's right.
Yeah. No one faults you for that.
No. I will share with you, in all my many, many years now of speaking and keynote speeches, I've only missed one myself, only one. And that one, I think 9/11 was on a Monday or a Tuesday. I'm not sure which day of the week, but it was one of those. And I was supposed to keynote a conference in Oklahoma City, actually. I was in Los Angeles at the time. I stood in the line at LAX for 4 hours and hadn't moved an inch. And I sat there not wanting to get on a plane either. And I thought, you know what? I think these people will understand. So I just got up and went home and called them and said, I can't make it because I don't know if the planes were even going to fly anyway. And about 2 or 3 years later, I came back and I did it. But I know that feeling about you take that. You really take it seriously. So Neil, we all have challenges. We all have, obstacles that we face. How do you deal with them on your journey? First of all, what can trip you up? As you're trying to do all this, what can trip you up?
You can easily be tripped up by incursions or encroachments, into your schedule. You're asked to participate in something, a committee meeting, a fundraiser, and you have to learn to be comfortable saying, no, I can't do that. I'll be happy to do something else. I'll be happy to, participate in some way. Don't count on me for that. I cannot do that. And I used to feel so guilty and so badly for, not saying yes to everything. And I saw that was not bringing me happiness, because when I was there, whatever I was doing, I didn't enjoy it. I wasn't good at it. I've been asked to participate in board meeting on various boards in hospitals, synagogue, schools, do what's that called, solicitation, for various things. And I just found that it was okay to say no. And I didn't allow that to be a disruptor, in my life. And I found it was okay. And I yet to find someone who disentangled themselves from me as a friend because I didn't accept or didn't do what they asked. That was part and parcel of a friendship, and I was able to understand that. I initially, wanted to be liked by everybody. I wanted to be liked by my patients. I wanted to be liked by family and friends. I wanted to be liked by my colleagues. I wanted to be, I always wanted a situation where if somebody were to call a doctor in New Orleans and say, we're thinking of hiring Dr. Baum for this program or to come and consult in our office. What kind of a guy is he? I always wanted people in my own backyard to say, he delivers. Whatever he says he's going to do, he's going to do. He does it on time. If I was asked to write a chapter in a book, they never had to badger me and ask, where's the chapter. If I say I'm going to do it, I promise I'll do it. You won't have to babysit me. You won't have to ask me. I will get it done. But I had to stop worrying about that everybody loved me. I knew that people did, but I had to stop focusing, on that and being liked by everybody. I really believe most people do. And I always enjoy when I get an evaluation and after something I do and I see, it's 5 stars or online reviews, I feel very enlightened, when it's so favorable. But you can't get everyone to like you. It's just not humanly possible. And so I had to learn to be comfortable with that.
Warren Buffett has said successful people say no to most things, and highly successful people say no to almost everything. I have so developed the skill of saying, "Oh, I would love to do that. I'm sorry, but I just can't." Because, A, it would violate one of my own principles, or I don't, I'm unable to devote the time to it, and I wouldn't want to disappoint you. Well, Neil, so what's one of the top strategies that you use to just keep you going in the right direction and not slipping back into old habits?
I would have to say it's my wife and children. My children are grown now. They're all between 35 and 40. And it's my wife and children. And I accept criticism from my children, that they will say, Dad, you shouldn't have said that. You shouldn't have done that. And I say, most of the time I say, because they have good judgment, really good judgment. And so does my wife. So I rely heavily on them and accept their constructive criticism. I think we need coaches, in life. And I think if you have one, then so be it. And that's good for you. If you don't have one, you hire one. You get a coach, who checks on what you're doing and how you are conducting yourself and how you're behaving. The top golfers and tennis players have coaches. These, number 1, number 2 golfers and tennis players in the world have coaches. So if they can have coaches, certainly Neil Baum deserves a coach as well. Mine happens to come from my family and my wife.
The great Michael Jordan needed a coach, and he was the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
It's funny. I have a very similar dynamic. I have 3 daughters and, of course, Diane. The daughters are anywhere from 30 to 35 years old. And the thing that, and I mean, their advice and their honest, critiques are welcomed and they don't hold back. They're good like that. But I don't know about you, Neil, but what I find remarkable is their wisdom at their young age. I mean, I wasn't anywhere near as, I don't know. I think I'm smart, but I did not have my act together in the ways that they seem to have. They become so wise so quickly. It's quite something, isn't it?
Well, it reminds me of the quote of Mark Twain, who said, when I was a teenager, my parents didn't know anything. He said, when I became, let's just say 21 or 22, he says, they got smart so quickly.
Yeah.
In other words, they knew what was going on and what you should do. And when you're younger, you don't listen to that. You think you know more than your parents. But as you get older and wiser, you realize how very wise and smart they are.
Yeah. And, I'll tell you this, there's a fashion, of course, to bash millennials, which you can't do in my presence. I won't accept it because the future is in good hands if it's in their hands. I'm very, very impressed with all of them. And even if you don't like it, you might as well get used to it because there's more of them than there are anybody else. And they are definitely the future, whether you want it or not. So you might as well roll with it. They know some things and we can learn from them. So, Neil, the people that are listening to this podcast, they're interested in their own version of prosperity for them. what advice would you give them, just going forward?
One advice that I got when I was younger, or two pieces of advice that I got that I did follow, was I started saving early. I put aside money early for my children's education. And it worked out so well that I was able to put them all the way through graduate school, schools that just a few years ago were $40,000 a year and another $10,000 in expenses. And I was able to put all of them through school because I started saving early. And I think most people don't start that process, and they think they're going to start when they're 55, and then too late. The market may do crazy things, and you're not going to have the money that you think you need for retirement. I'm living well within my means. I get a car every 4 or 5 years. I'm comfortable with that. I take good care of it. The only thing that I spend a lot of money on is my children and grandchildren's trips, that we go on, not exotic, but, we go to Machu Picchu, Peru, we go to South Africa, we go to the Orient, we took a trip. Have you ever heard of Cappadocia, Turkey? It was at the Silk Crossroads, and we're off topic, but I spend a lot of money on travel with my children. So that's one piece of advice. Save early and you'll have, this wonderful nest egg. And it requires discipline, when you're not making a whole lot to put 10% aside. But that's what I did. The second piece of advice I have for physicians is to find a mentor. Find someone who can show you the ropes, teach you how to cross the tracks or not cross the tracks, and someone who you admire and can be helpful. And you'll be amazed at how many people appreciate being asked to be a mentor. And so I found a mentor, and I now mentor others. I probably have mentored 24 students between college and going to medical school. And I work on them and I write a paper with each of them. And 22 of them are physicians or in medical school now. One became a nurse practitioner, and one became the number one salesperson in a big pharmaceutical company in America. So that's part of my legacy, are these 24 people that I paid it back, that I got mentored very early on, and I want to help other people. And so I think it's really helpful to a younger person is to find that person that can lead you on the right path and help you. That's sometimes not something your wife can do. My wife couldn't tell me whether to operate on someone or not operate on someone, or how to manage an inappropriate request, but my mentor did. He was very, very helpful. So I appreciated that, and I'm paying it forward.
I love that. Thank you. Wonderful advice. So, Neil, I have this fun question I always ask people. If you were a toy, any toy at all, what toy would it be and why?
Do you ever play with Lego?
Sure.
I'm an addict.
Oh, is that right?
When I was a little boy, I played with Erector Set and Lincoln Logs. Do you remember those two?
Of course.
Okay. And now, as a big boy, I play with Lego. I just did a project with my 6-year-old grandson. We did 1,000-piece Lego. When you look at that instruction book, do you do Lego? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, I know what you're talking about, but I haven't done anything like that at all.
A Lego instruction book has no words in it. It just shows you the piece, shows you where to put it. That instruction book works in China, India, Saudi Arabia, If there are people in Antarctica and Antarctica, it'll work there too. The instruction book is absolutely genius how it works. 2, Lego comes in bags. You get a big project and it may have 15 bags. And it works out just perfectly that the number of pieces that are in that bag is just the number of pieces that you need. In working with Lego for 20 or plus 30 years, I found maybe 1 or 2 times there was a piece missing. And you call up the company, they will send you the piece, send you a apology note, and they'll send you a toy, to say they're sorry. How wouldn't healthcare be wonderful? You make a mistake and you send the patient an apology note. I'm sorry that I didn't get the record to you, or I didn't get the report to you. I will see that it doesn't happen again. And I'd like to send you a coupon for coffee as my way of calling it to my attention, saying thank you. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we behaved like the Lego company? The pieces are indestructible. Is that did I pick the right word? Indestructible. You can't break one. You can't step on it. You can't crack one. They're indestructible. And it allows for so much creativity and innovation. Lego, it starts when you're 2 years of age. The bigger blocks are called Duplo. Those are big blocks. And then you graduate up into the little bricks that you probably are so familiar with. This is a toy that is good for 2 years old to 102. Can you name another toy that meets that criteria, that can span 10 decades with such perfection, with such opportunities for innovation, creativity, spontaneity, with a company that stands behind it? The Lego model is only the best is good enough. Wouldn't it be wonderful if a medical practice had that mantra? Only the best is good enough. Lego does. I find it one of the most incredible inventions, and I can't wait. I've been to Legoland in San Diego and to the Legoland in Atlanta, but I can't wait. Lego is made in Denmark, near Copenhagen, Denmark. I can't wait to take my grandson to Copenhagen and see how the Legos are produced. They're phenomenal. So if I had to pick a toy that I'd like to be a Lego brick, and I would learn to think inside the box, not outside the box.
That is the best discussion of Lego I have ever heard by a mile. I'm inspired now. I'm inspired. Neil, one last question, and this is, you know as well as I do, when you meet and hang out with successful people, by however that definition is, they always want to know, what have you read lately? What book is it you're reading? And is there any book that you could recommend, that you'd like to recommend to anyone that's listening today, that they should pick up and read?
Can you see a big smile on my face?
I do.
All right, let's see if it can be heard on the other end of the line. There is no better book. None better. Maybe the Bible goes to the top of the list. But if you're in healthcare, there's no better book than Marketing Your Clinical Practice Ethically, Effectively, and Economically by none other than Neil Baum. 200,000 copies.
I know.
It's translated into Spanish. It's in its 4th edition. And before I leave this world, I want to do one more edition. Okay, now let's get serious. Book I've been reading lately and that I think has got a good message is the One-Page Marketing Plan. For the most part, the healthcare profession doesn't have a clue about marketing. They really don't have any skills in how to market. and they hire a marketing team that comes and they give them a fancy booklet, at the end, and nothing gets done. The one-page marketing plan is one page. Within one page, you can put on there, where you've been, where you're going, and how to get there. And you can do it on one page. It's an excellent, excellent book. It's written by not a doctor, but this applies to anyone, I think, that has a service to offer. And it's written by someone in Australia. And if I had to pick a book that helps improve my well-being, my overall health, it's called Breath. And it's by James Nestor. And it points out that we don't know how to breathe properly. We don't breathe properly, and it affects our digestion, our teeth, our immune system, our heart, our fatigue, our mental well-being. This book is well researched, not by a physician, but he has researched. Oh, you'll sleep better when you understand, breath. And it is an excellent book. And I think it has been a game changer. And I believe I am leading a healthier life because I've learned to breathe better. You think you automatically, the moment you come out of the womb, you take your breath and that you're launched forever and you learn how to breathe and it's automatic. That's not the case. We don't know how to breathe properly. And this gives it, examples, and it shows you how to do it. And it gives you the science behind breathing properly. I highly recommend it.
That is a book I did not know, and I will absolutely pick up. I believe quite strongly that, the mind-body connection is direct line through the breath. The breath is the way through to that. And if anybody even just wants to test that, if you're even remotely anxious, sit down and take a few 3, 5, 10 nice deep breaths and watch everything change, right? I mean, it's that different, but this goes far beyond that. And no, I think that's great. I mean, that's a big part of much of yoga is correct breathing. What do they call it? Pranayama, I think it is. So absolutely fabulous. The Science of Breath. And that book is Breath by James Nestor. Thank you. That's great. Neil, I knew this would be fun. I've been looking forward to this. I'm delighted to do that. You and I will be talking in other venues as well. I'm so glad that you took the time, and I just appreciate everything you're doing. So I'm looking forward to the next edition of your book. Your book is literally a classic in medical practice marketing, and it was the first and still the best. It's fantastic.
Thank you for the compliment. I enjoyed doing this with you. I look forward to doing it again and interacting with you frequently and in the near future.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Work at the top of your license. Wow. And of course, for those of us who don't have a license, it simply means do the essential things that only you can do, and then work effectively through the efforts of other people who want to do what they do so well on the team. And make sure when you come to the top of the ladder you're climbing that you won't find yourself facing the wrong wall. Brilliant. That's just brilliant. Prosperity can only be found, I have learned, if you're facing the right wall, and sorting that out now, wherever you are in your personal journey, is absolutely essential. Let me know what you think. You can send me an email at rem@toppractices.com. Prosperity is the entire focus of Top Practices. Most doctors are struggling with the business of medicine, and those that aren't truly understand that through association with other successful practitioners, they can take their success to the next level or something greater, like prosperity. Prosperity in business is a function of mindset, marketing, and management. That is our mission at Top Practices. You can find out more about Top Practices, our marketing and management programs for our doctors, our workshops, and annual summit at toppractices.com. Until next time, this is Rem Jackson, Smile when you wake up, and then have a really great day. Your best day ever. Nothing is more important.